KVSH Vashon Island, Washington. It's the Wednesday Morning Scramble with myself, Susan McCabe,
and Luke McQuillin.
And our special guest, Shango Los. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome.
Shango, tell us your role right now in the field of cannabis.
Sure. Well, I'm a little bit all over the place right now. Here on the island, I continue to be the founder of what was the local trade organization on the island, the Vashon Island Marijuana Entrepreneurs Alliance. But with the recent changes in the dismantling of medical marijuana in the state, we've actually changed our name to get in the spirit of that. So now we're the Vashon Island Marijuana Enthusiasts Alliance. Originally, we played the role of helping medical marijuana producers on the island find reliable and legal channels to sell their products in the rest of the state. But since the medical industry has been dismantled in the state, there's not much future in that anymore. So we switched over to the Enthusiasts Alliance because now we're primarily an education organization reaching out to patients and explaining marijuana and giving a lot of support for patients on the island who don't know where else to go.
So let's back up a little bit. Tell us what the laws regarding both medicinal and recreational marijuana were before July.
Okay. So before July, there were recreational stores, but there were also dedicated medical dispensaries that were not licensed by the state. And so there was a competition between the licensed stores and the unlicensed stores. And we had medical in our state for 18 years prior to this. And there were some concerns about the competition from the recreational stores. And of course, the state wanted to capture more of their taxes.
Sure.
And so they decided that it was in our best interest to dismantle the medical marijuana stores and push those buyers to the recreational stores. And that finally happened in July, as you said. The challenge is that while the recreational stores will eventually have all the medical products, they don't have them yet.
No.
And so, and the price is much higher. And so in the interim, the ones who are losing are our most vulnerable population of patients because they didn't have the political strength that for-profit businesses did to influence the legislature.
Wow.
That's interesting. So the for-profit businesses that sell recreational marijuana basically prevailed.
Certainly.
With the state legislature. And so are all the medical dispensaries just out of business?
Yes, they're all out of business. In fact, we got a little press here on Vashon a couple weeks ago because our medical dispensary here on the island never closed in July when the law changed, simply because they were never told. The dispensaries were all sent letters from the state saying the law has changed, you must now close. But we kind of slipped through the cracks because we're in unincorporated King County, and so the article that was written about it, everybody was saying, well, it wasn't my responsibility. It wasn't my responsibility. So anyway, we had the last medical dispensary open in the state until people noticed.
Yeah.
So what do you see as the future of legal marijuana in Washington state?
Well, first of all, it's on the grow. I mean, every month they're returning more and more revenues as more people realize that a lot of the reefer madness taboos of the last 50 years were based on lies. So there are more and more people preferring to enjoy cannabis and to often drink less as well, because even though alcohol is more available, it's more dangerous than
more
marijuana
poisonous,
is.
correct.
Exactly. And so, but even though I'm disappointed for the patients for right now, and every day I work with patients who cannot find access to the specialty cannabis preparations that they look for, I do have faith that the recreational system will come around because there's people who want to buy these products.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a matter of time for them to ramp up where they can find the appropriate strains, hire people who know how to make the processes, develop their packaging, get them in the store. And we're just seeing the first inkling of that right now. But I figure a year from now, those products will exist.
Like more edibles and things of that nature. That
So specifically, probably Rick Simpson oil, very clean, unflavored tinctures, because a lot of things in the recreational store, they're made for fun. And so they add flavors and sugars and, real patients can't drink THC infused soda pop, and so there's at a lack. We need things that are stripped down and very simple and not quite as sexy as a lot of the stuff that's in the recreational market right now.
So are those preparations currently just inaccessible for people who need them medicinally?
They're inaccessible legally.
Right.
So everybody's gone back to the black market with the way they used to. And so, if you used to be on seizure medication and then you got turned on to medical cannabis products and your seizures went away, and now the state says that you cannot have those until they figure out how to develop them, and suddenly you're told to go back to the pharmaceuticals, most patients are saying, well, forget that. The person that I used to buy from in the medical industry is now just selling out of their house. And so I'm going to continue to work with them. And so you're finding a lot more, what we like to call more the informal market than what we think of it as the black market. But the black market's got such a bad sound to it. I mean, these are kind medical providers who are artisans in their craft, providing for other people who are trying to get relief from their ailments. And for now, since a lot of those products are not in the recreational market, people are finding their healing where they can.
Are those people at risk of prosecution for selling in the informal market?
They are.
And how adamant is the state being about seeking those folks out and prosecuting them?
So far, it seems to be selective enforcement. It depends on how you're going about your business, because it does seem that the state understands that there's a gap here. For example, they rolled out this new policy where they were going to essentially bless and certify all these new recreational stores as being medical. But there's only a handful of those right now because the regulations or the how you apply is so complex and burdensome financially to the recreational producers. And so the state understands that there's this gap right now. And so there doesn't seem to be a huge push to put all of these patient providers behind bars. That said, the folks who are producing huge commercial amounts of plants or are, also having fights on their property, and then when the police come, there are guns there, and it's the way the King County Sheriff said it was, if there's no problem, there's no problem. But if there's a problem, there's a problem. And so in this kind of gray area that we're in right now, there doesn't seem to be a lot of interest at the state level to go after these small family businesses that are trying to provide for patients. Now, when the rec stores get this, their shelves are filled with, cannabis medicine type products, we may see that change.
Two questions. Number one, are those cannabis medical products going to increase in price? And number two, can you give us a sense of how many growers are still going on Vashon?
So for certain, the prices are higher. There's no doubt about that because the state is charging a tax on it, both like a sin tax, a vice tax, and then also just a simple sales tax. And also, when you knew who your medical provider was as a person, you would be able to, let's say, for example, you're looking to cure your cancer and you need 60 grams of Rick Simpson oil. If you go at a retail recreational store, you're going to pay 60 times the price for 1 gram. Whereas if you were going to a medical person, they'd say, oh, well, I'm going to give you a discount because you're a cancer patient, and that's a drag, so we're going to give you some money off from that. And since you're going to buy 60 grams all at once, we're also going to give you, a 40% discount because of a bulk purchase. But if you go to a recreational store, it's not like that. It's 60 times full price.
Wow.
And so, people who are treating their cancer with cannabis are absolutely getting their medicine in the informal market. And then, so your second question about how many people are growing still on the island, the official answer for you is 0, right?
Right.
But
There you go.
we know that's not true though, because Vashon's number one cash crop for the last 30 years has been cannabis. So we know that there are growers on the island, but they have all returned to the shadows and deal with smaller groups of people and friends and things like that. We have several recreational growers on the island. Like Vashon Velvet and Vashon Island Organics, who are on the island and represent us well in the recreational market and have got very, very fine products. But they don't necessarily they're not processors, so they are not preparing these very specific medical value-added products. They're growing really great flower, and then they pass them on to processors. And then what the processors do with it is their own thing. Actually, Vashon Velvet has got this fantastic reputation because they not only are women-owned and operated, they use LED lights that use much less electricity. Wow. They recycle their water, and their flower is so exceptional that they just roll most of it into what are called pre-rolls, which we would think of as joints, and they sell them in boxes directly to the retailers, and people just love them. I mean, some people say that they're the best pre-rolls in the state, and so that's exciting.
Huh. Do they have to have a lot of security?
Well, the short answer is yes, because all of the medical growers in the state have got, video cameras and gates or walled buildings, and all of the video is streamed to the state so they can look at it at every time. So to that degree, yes. But you could be far worse. It's not like it's a bank where they've all got armed guards are there or anything.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that would not make the business fun. I want to back up just a little bit because you said something that alluded to the notion that Rick Simpson oil cures cancer. Is that proven?
Well, the first answer is yes. I have seen it happen with patients firsthand now. When I first started in this, I had only heard it anecdotally. But now I have directed patients to places where they can get Rick Simpson oil. They've used it, and their cancer has gone away. So, and all they were doing was using cannabis oil and getting vitamin D, not injections, but getting vitamin D as well. And so I've seen it now firsthand. Now, while these studies have not been legal in the United States, they have been happening in Europe, and specifically in England. And so cannabis has been proven to interrupt the cancer spread and to cause it to repeal back, decrease the activity, and eventually remove tumors. It's difficult to put them all in the same bucket because there's lots of different types of cancer.
Right.
Yeah.
So, for example, when you're using cannabis oil to fight lymphoma, you're going to shrink down the tumors to a 1 or 2% of what they were originally, but often they won't go away. But you'll get tests every 3 months, and you'll see that they're not growing, whereas other more aggressive types of cancer, cannabis might not be that effective against simply because cannabis doesn't have enough time to help the cancer. Because the course for beating cancer is 3 months, and so if you get someone who's stage 4 with an aggressive cancer, it may be too late for them. But we're really excited by all of the true scientific studies that are coming out of Europe that show that cannabis stops and or cures cancer. And the government has got a patent on using cannabis to cure cancer, and they have for a couple decades.
Oh, our government?
Yeah, the U.S. government holds this patent, and
that's
they
interesting.
just don't like to talk about it.
Didn't they just legalize cannabis research for medicinal purposes?
Yeah, I would say that's a accurate statement. They have opened up the application process to let a certain amount of institutions apply. So it's not just everybody; it's still very controlled. But yes, they have decided to move forward with the research.
Well, we're talking with cannabis expert Shango Los. Excuse me, Luke. You had a question?
No, I said that's good news.
That is good news.
Yes.
And I didn't know that all that research was coming out of Europe.
If people want to learn more about it, the website that I direct patients to is Project projectcbd.org. It's a wonderful website run by our friends at Project CBD down in California, and they have done a lot of the hard research for us. If you go to the website, there's a section that says conditions, and then if you click on conditions, it shows you this whole page list of all the different conditions that cannabis helps with. And when you click on the particular condition, it gives you links to all of the scientific studies in PubMed.gov showing the support for cancer, helping with Alzheimer's and cancer and arthritis and autism. And I mean, it's an amazing list. Cannabis was the primary part of the pharmacopoeia before it was banned. Suddenly, we've been using cannabis for generations upon generations, and then suddenly, for political reasons, they banned it. And the pharmaceutical companies jumped in to fill the void so they could sell their products.
Right.
Well, now with the taboo decreasing and people starting to realize more and more that we were lied to for political reasons, people are realizing that the old reliable herb of marijuana is something that we should get back to using. And it's non-addictive. It is, no one has ever died from it. It's very safe. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is you can accidentally over-medicate and maybe be uncomfortable and kind of paranoid for 45 minutes. I mean, if that's your worst symptom, that's way better than any of the other options for most of these ailments.
That website, does it have recipes on there? Because I know that there's lots of different combinations of what type of mixture that you give for each type of medical condition. Do they have those recipes on there, or do you have to sort of figure that out on your own, or are there places that you can actually get specific stuff for specific ailments?
That is a question that's right on the edge of the kind of information that's available publicly. I mean, this is what I teach. I speak often to doctor and naturopath groups, explaining. So for this ailment, you want to have something that's this many milligrams of THC and this many milligrams of CBD, and some things you want to treat with more of an indica strain, and some things you want to treat with more of a sativa strain. To talk real generally about it. And so I don't know if that's specifically on the projectcbd.org website. It's certainly inside of the studies that they're quoting. For example, in the UK, they have a drug made by GW Pharmaceutical called Sativex, and it is used by patients. But really, if you look what the ingredients is, it's simply a 1-to-1 preparation of THC and CBD at 3.5 milligrams per dose, and use until you have relief. I mean, heck, we have people on the island who make that as a tincture, and it didn't have to go through all of the laborious, whatever the British version of the FDA is. Yeah. But it's the way that nature intended that healing to happen, instead of the repackaging it as a pharmaceutical product. So I know that's a long answer to your question, but there you have it.
But well, I have to admit that I had a really severe back problem. I had spinal stenosis, and it lasted about 2 years until I couldn't take it anymore, and I finally got surgery. So I was a green card recipient. And some of the things I was trying to specifically, I didn't want to get necessarily high, but I wanted to relieve some of the pain and not take all the oxycodone or any of that other kind of medicine that really was worse for me. So I was having a difficult time finding that particular combination that would really help. There wasn't a real hard and fast recipe that I could use every time. I'd go to the medical marijuana place, and a lot of times there'd be, edibles were more what I would rather do, but I found a hard time getting to know what those combinations were and what the balances were.
And you're not alone. What you're asking is a pretty sophisticated question, and is going to be out of the experience of a lot of the bud tenders that you would have spoken to. So, for example, number one, I certainly wouldn't recommend smoking cannabis for that. That is something that you're going to want a tincture for, or potentially an edible. Second, because you've got heavy neuropathic pain, you're going to want a lot of CBD in there to boost your endocannabinoid system because there's signaling issues mixed in with that. And then you were probably, had actual physical pain issues, and probably especially at night, because if you rolled over, you had pain, which then woke you up. So then you have insomnia, which then I would recommend an indica tincture on top of that to act as a muscle relaxant and help you sleep. And so then I would have suggested, 10 to 20 milligrams of CBD a day with a little bit of THC in there to take advantage of the entourage effect, how they work together.
Right.
And then in the evening, an indica tincture to help your body relax and help you slip into sleep. Boom. But not a lot of people have that level of sophistication at the retail level.
Well, or that kind of information, because they're obviously you're clear on how all this works. We're talking with Shango Los, who is a cannabis expert and Vashon Islander, who just sat here and gave a prescription for stenosis pain, which is fairly complex. I'm curious about how many American physicians are latching on to this idea and actually prescribing cannabis for cancer or for spinal pain or other kinds of pain conditions.
The folks who both know how to recommend a particular cannabis preparation and are in favor of it, they could probably fit in this room. Luckily, though, the number of doctors who are becoming in favor of cannabis is increasing greatly. And the kind of information that they need to feel empowered to make these recommendations are increasing. And the likelihood of them running into an insurance problem practicing recommending cannabis is decreasing. And so we're on the right side of history, but there is not a lot of it now. There's not a lot of folks recommending that now, and that those are the folks that I talk to all the time, because they don't even necessarily want it to go on their resume that they've learned this stuff, but their patients are asking about it. And so I am very often invited to private homes where there's going to be a room. There's going to be a couple Western doctors, a couple naturopaths, a couple of nurses, maybe a patient or two, somebody whose significant other is really sick, and so we just sit around and talk, and I teach what I have learned during my years of doing this. And so they have a better frame of reference to put all the other information that they're learning, because there's so much noise. Everybody wants to talk about cannabis, and most of the information is very low quality.
Yeah. Wow.
Shango Los, you are the president of VIMEA, Vashon Island
Marijuana Enthusiasts
Alliance. Yes. And you have a fairly beyond the island career as well in cannabis information.
Sure.
Communication?
Now it's leaning more towards media. So I was doing a lot of brand strategy and startup business consulting for medical companies when they existed, and then they went away. And then and I've worked with some recreational producers as well. But during the transition, I found that what I had to offer. I mean, even though I'm a lifelong brand strategist and can talk business. The part that I had that was valuable was the experience with cannabis business, specifically the development of products and working with patients, because that's where my passion is working with patients.
Like it, yeah.
I mean, I talk to patients every day on the island who come to me for advice and to get direction about where they can get these medicines, either through the recreational stores or elsewhere. And so I moved into media. So I've got a podcast at shapingfire.com. That one is actually launching in a week. I recently just left my role as a founder of the podcast at ganjapreneur.com. I did 54 episodes for them, but decided it was time to go out on my own so I could have a little more control.
Sure.
And so Shaping Fire is going to launch here in 2 weeks. And I travel the country a lot, spending a lot of time in California right now, teaching both cannabis business owners and also patients, and sharing what I've learned.
Well,
So,
whoa.
okay, you go.
Okay. Are there any stores I'm not asking you necessarily to name them per se, but are there some stores that have sort of gotten on the bandwagon with medical products, marijuana products in Seattle that patients here like on Vashon can go to?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is no, because the problem is that the stores may be on board, but there's not enough being produced that they can keep it on their shelves, and so they might get in some Rick Simpson oil, and people notice it, and they tell their friend, and they're sold out in a day.
Yeah.
And so so there are like, for example, Seattle Cannabis Company, they're right off the West Seattle Bridge, and they've got a great staff that does that educates folks, but they have a hard time keeping this stuff on the shelf, and so we need more processors to produce more of this medical product so that it becomes available. But nearby, we've got 3 directions where we can take ferries. South
Sure.
North
Right.
Seattle and
Sure.
and the south end, and so there are recreational stores on all 3 ends. And we're to the point now that we being the Vashon Island Marijuana Enthusiast Alliance, we're just starting to develop relationships with these folks, so that we can recommend them confidently. I mean, I can
Okay.
say nice things about Seattle Cannabis Company on First because I'm friends and I know several of the bud tenders there, and they come out to Vimeo meetings, and I know they're doing their own education, and so I know that they're forthright folks who are doing a good job. So we don't have a relationship with them, but there are more and more of the recreational stores that are hiring people specifically for that.
Shango Los, how do people get a hold of you to get more information about medical marijuana and cannabis in general? How do they reach you?
Well, you can certainly go to my website at shangolos.com. You can get in contact with me there, and you can also find out upcoming events that I'm either speaking at or happening here on the island.
All right. Thank you so much for
Yes,
joining us.
thank
I
you.
hope you'll come back and update us as the medical marijuana business grows.
Sure. Can
Pardon
I
the
plug
pun.
a couple on-island events before I go?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So first of all, on October 7th, I've been invited to do a talk on medical marijuana at the Vashon Senior Center. This will be the second time I've spoken there. Last time it was standing room only, a real popular event, and that's on Friday, October 7th at 1:00 in the afternoon. And then the next Vimeo meeting is Wednesday, September 28th, and our guest speaker is Farmer Tom Lauerman, who will be speaking on harvesting and curing your summertime outdoor home grow. And that's at 7 p.m. At the Grange Hall. And then for cannabis folks on the island who are interested in working in the cannabis industry, this Sunday, September 18th, I'll be offering the keynote at the WANA Career Fair in Bellevue at the Red Lion Hotel. And so they're going to have a bunch of cannabis companies who are hiring now. They're meeting folks and collecting resumes, and there will also be cannabis employment experts talking about how to prepare a resume for cannabis and just generally giving good advice.
And is this information also available at shangolos.com?
It certainly is. It's all available in the events section at shangolos.com.
shangolos.com. Did your parents name you that?
They did not. I changed my name about 20-some years ago when I moved to California.
You and a whole lot of other people. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll look forward to talking with you more. And in honor of that, I've got a Bruce Springsteen song.
Okay. What do you got?
Into the Fire.